All right, guys, we have a lot to talk about today. This whole Black Widow thing has really exploded and has become an unmitigated disaster. First of all, the film is going to make less than $400 million at the box office. And let me preface all this by saying that a couple of weeks ago, I released a video and I discussed how the power of the MCU is waning, that Phase 4 is a disaster and is a step in the wrong direction, that interest and enthusiasm in the Marvel Cinematic Universe franchise, the MCU franchise, is declining precipitously and has done so over the really since the end of Endgame. After that film, after the credits rolled, for many people, I pinned this comment in the last video, Endgame was the end game for them, and it's not really a surprise that that is the case because everything had been culminating to that moment for 10 years. And as soon as that moment had passed, as did many fans, and we're seeing the repercussions of that now with the fact that even just 3 years ago, as I pointed out on Twitter, you could upload Robert Downey Jr. Farting for an hour and a half at the movie theaters, and it would make $1.5 billion. Now you have a big budget blockbuster picture coming out from Marvel, and it can't even crack $400 million, which is embarrassing. The film was certainly going to lose money, much in the same way that when Disney started their venture of making spin-off films with B and C-list characters in the Star Wars universe, that also was a unmitigated disaster. And this sort of reminds me a lot of the Han Solo film in many ways, and the fact that it was very expensive, it didn't do very well, and it resulted in a major realignment and direction shift for the brand. By the way, I apologize for all the crickets you can hear. I kind of live in the woods, so I'm just walking around. But no, I think that really the MCU is in free fall, and it's sort of disaster time for the MCU. And many people are going to say, oh, well, that's just ridiculous. That's so overblown. That's not fair at all to say. And the reality of it is the numbers speak for themselves. So people might see my rant about the MCU and about how I'm losing interest in the MCU and how interest in Phase 4 is very low, and how you can't just have a universe built around C-list solo movie characters, which is what Phase 4 is. I mean, Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange is B-list, to be fair, but you have Ant-Man, a third Ant-Man movie. Like, all of these movies have very, very low fan enthusiasm. As I discussed in prior videos, one of the biggest selling points, you can almost predict perfectly the performance of a comic book film and performance at the box office with pre-release hype. That's why many of the most high-performing films of all time in the genre, The Dark Knight, Infinity War, Endgame, they made waves online before they released. And a film like Black Widow, so much apathy going into the film. I didn't see anybody on Twitter just saying, like, I can't wait to see Black Widow. I can't wait to see what happens. I mean, for one, it's a prequel movie. Prequel films tend to do worse. But also, I just don't understand why, what the movie added to the universe, frankly. But that's kind of an aside from the fact that now Scarlett Johansson is suing Marvel. And the reason that she is doing this is because allegedly Marvel breached the contract. And essentially, they released the movie for streaming on Disney+. And Scarlett Jo gets a percentage of box office revenue. And she wouldn't be doing this, by the way, if the film did well at the box office. If the film did well at the box office and she was making good money on the film, nothing would happen. This whole thing is being spurred on by the fact that the film tanked at the box office. It's an unmitigated disaster for both Disney and Scarlett Jo. Scarlett Jo's only making $20 million. Oh, yeah. Poor baby. I feel so bad for her. You know, her life is so hard. She only made $20 million on this movie that, by the way, tanked for Disney and lost Disney money. If we're accounting for the marketing budget and the budget to produce the film, it definitely will lose money. So fundamentally, Scarlett Johansson is suing because she gets a percentage of the box office numbers, but she doesn't get money for digital streaming on Disney Plus and other things like this. So she wants a cut of that now too. And Kevin Feige actually sides with Scarlett Jo here, and Disney is siding with Disney, obviously. So, you know, Kevin Feige said he's embarrassed that they did the same day release on streaming, and going forward, they're not going to do this. So this probably has, really stirred up the pot here on how Disney's going to release their films going forward. But this is an aside from the fundamental issue, which is that fans are not interested in Phase 4 of the MCU. Fans are not looking forward to Shang-Chi, broadly speaking. Now, somebody's going to go in the comments and say, I'm looking forward to it, I'm so excited for it, and that's great and all, but we have to compare it to when fans were really excited for Marvel movies, when Marvel was making splashes on the pop culture scene, which is where I want Marvel and DC to be. I remember when Captain America Civil War and Infinity War were coming out. These were only a couple of years ago now at this point, between 3 to 5 years ago. And, it was so amazing to see so many people who have never read a comic book in their life so interested in these comic book characters. Like, for somebody like me who is a big comic book buff, you might think that I'm the one that actually wants the C-list and D-list character movies, but I actually don't, because I noticed that enthusiasm amongst the general public for the franchise is substantially lower when we're, using characters that only niche fans are aware of, like Shang-Chi, and that enthusiasm for the films is much higher when we're using Batman and Superman and Iron Man and these characters that fans have loved. Now, one thing that's sort of missing in this equation thus far of what I'm saying is that Marvel does do a fairly good job at actually converting characters from C-list to A-list. So who's an example of this is very obviously Iron Man. Iron Man was a C-list character and it became pretty much A-list over the course of 5 years through the Iron Man trilogy. And I do give Marvel credit for that, but I just don't see that happening with these characters. These characters are not likable. Captain Marvel, for instance, is highly divisive, and about half of the fan base loves her and half hates her. This was not the case with Iron Man or Captain America. So I think that's going to be a big problem for Marvel going forward, is that many of these characters are divisive. And the characters that they did set up for Phase 4 to really carry the torch, like Black Panther, obviously Black Panther can't carry on because Chadwick Boseman passed away and they don't want to replace him with another actor. So that pretty much leaves you with Captain Marvel, which is, as I said, very divisive, not very well liked. Spider-Man, also somewhat divisive. A lot of the hardcore Spider-Man fans do not like this Spider-Man. So that's also a problem. And, again, I guess Shang-Chi and Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, I just don't see how these characters are going to carry this Phase 4 universe. And again, you're going to continue to see legal fallouts and change-ups and shift-ups. And I don't know what a shift-up is, but I just made it up. But you're going to see a lot of shake-ups and a lot of people, a lot of moving pieces and things moving release dates. And again, after this film, this is exactly what happened with Solo and the Star Wars side of things, where Solo tanked at the box office. Disney freaked the fuck out. They panicked. They considered firing Kathleen Kennedy. They considered sort of changing the entire film slate, which they did, by the way. They totally shifted course and canceled several movies, and we're going to start to see that here, where we have for the next 2 years movies that are heavily in pre-production, in principal photography, or in post. Now, you're not going to touch those films, obviously. You've already spent the money, particularly if it's in principal photography or post. But for some of these films in very early pre-production, you're going to start to see some shakeups. You're going to start to see shoehorning in characters that people actually do want to see, like Spider-Man and Iron Man. You're going to start to see making phone calls for Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans to come back. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Many fans are going to say, oh, we need to move on. We need to leave these characters behind. We've had enough of them and whatever. But, I'm sorry. We just have to come with the terms that Shang-Chi and Ant-Man can't carry the same level of hype and enthusiasm that RDJ as Iron Man and Chris Evans did as Captain America. So I think those are going to be some really big problems for the Marvel Universe going forward. And we're already starting to see them, as I predicted, before Black Widow came out. And again, you can disagree with my opinions on Phase 4 of the MCU, but the numbers don't lie, the box offices don't lie, and this is what these companies really respond to. And you're already seeing that not only is Black Widow a financial disaster and it's going to lose money, but also now they're being sued, which is going to make them lose even more money, millions and millions of dollars, fighting Scarlett Jo, after she's already been paid 20 mil of the 400 mil. So they're already making these huge payouts on top of the fact that they're losing money. So this film is going to cause a course correction. Disney's not a big fan of losing money, and the people at the top above Kevin Feige are going to start to push down on him to make this Phase 4 venture profitable. Now, what I will say is that on the television side and the Disney Plus side, Disney is doing a good job. So this is purely talking about, when I talk about the MCU, I'm talking specifically about the film universe, not Loki and these other shows which have been successful and have successfully driven memberships to the Disney Plus program. So it's not to say that Disney altogether is headed for on a course correction, or needs a course correction rather, but certainly on the film side with Phase 4, they are going to need that, and we'll continue to see that here in the coming years. But thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know where you think Phase 4 is headed, and let me know your thoughts again on all of this in the comment section down below. My name is Slickmoff. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.